Indeed, we all know modern, efficient, and resource-saving technologies are not only drivers for growth and innovation. They also make a significant contribution to raising environmental standards, disseminate environmental knowledge, and thus improve living conditions. In 2016, my ministry, the Ministry for the Environment, launched this funding program already, the Environmental Protection Export Initiative, with the aim of promoting knowledge and the application of innovative environmental technologies on global scale. I need to make clear that our program is not a classic export promotion program. Our funding program starts a little bit before by asking, how do we want to support companies and stakeholders abroad in the introduction of environmental protection technologies? As part of the technology spectrum here, green hydrogen and fuel cells for the integration of renewable energies also play a significant role, as we might know these days already. As part, our support program complements thus, in particular, the activities of our colleagues within the Ministry of Economy in this special but environmentally very important area of off-grid energy supply. For the German government, the use of green, sustainable production of hydrogen is a central building block for climate protection and a successful energy transition. As you know, Germany launched a national innovation program for hydrogen and fuel cell technologies already a couple of years ago. And last year, we adopted an overarching national hydrogen strategy in Germany as one of our center political programs aligning the energy transition. Here, decentralized systems are increasingly coming into focus, particularly internationally, both in urban and especially in rural areas. They offer robust solutions for energy supply from renewable sources that can be implemented quickly. Meanwhile, about 10% of these so-called microgrids installed so far are pure solar PV, also all solar diesel systems, and increasingly represent the most cost-effective option for climate-friendly energy supply. But this is what you know in Nigeria as well. There is still an immense need worldwide to replace diesel generators to ensure environmentally friendly power supply for millions of people and thus support climate change and sustainable development. Hydrogen and fuel cell technology enable microgrids or small standalone systems to be powered entirely by renewable energy in a wide range of applications and uses. Decentralized grids and standalone solutions can thus make an important contribution to supplying people and urban and rural regions with renewable electricity on a permanent, climate-friendly, and reliable basis. For the implementation in the field of off-grid and decentralized power supply, however, there are complex issues to address, technically as well as economically in terms of communication and building of business models. The wide range of applications represent a wide variety of power classes, load profiles, and regional requirements. And at the same time, local service infrastructure, supply chains, standardization, certification, and approval of new markets must be implemented for operation, and, if necessary, for the development of additional locations. These and many more questions will be addressed in our funding program, together with you, our project partners, to find suitable solutions. Especially because for the application of hydrogen technologies, as well as for the production of green hydrogen for renewable energies, Nigeria has a high potential and favorable natural conditions. We will find out more about this in a moment and in the course of our event today. I would now therefore like to take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks for the remarkable commitment shown by our colleagues at the delegation in Nigeria. Thanks again for your real high endeavor, and for sure for the colleagues here in Berlin. Ms. Kondemi is participating as well. I'm looking very much forward to today's exchange. I'm very interested and curious to learn more. And at this stage of the morning, thank you very much for your attention. And yes, thanks for participating. Thank you very much. And yes, looking forward for today's networking event.
Thank you so much, Ms. Parker, for that welcome address. Thank you so much. All right. Next we'll go to Ms. Kondemi Pedrija from the Chambers for Green Tech Services, DIHK, for her opening address. Welcome, Pedrija.
Thank you, Sharon. Good to see you again. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Patrizia Kondemi, and I would like to welcome you all on behalf of Chambers for Green Tech as part of the Association of German Chambers of Commerce. We are one of the implementing partners of the Export Initiative Environmental Technologies, and as described by Mrs. Parker from the German Ministry for the Environment. In this context, we assist the German Chambers of Commerce abroad in carrying out capacity building projects in the field of environmental technologies. More precisely, we cover three main topics, which are water and wastewater management, circular economy, and green hydrogen production for off-grid use. We do so by sharing technology, knowledge, green technology knowledge, and thus qualifying and advising relevant stakeholders in the respective countries, as well as German companies looking into entering a foreign market, which is basically why we are here today. Thanks to the delegation of German Industry and Commerce in Nigeria, we have managed to implement this beautiful event, as well as a very elaborate feasibility study on the potential of green hydrogen for off-grid use in Nigeria, which will be presented in detail later on as one of today's highlights. I would like to thank Katharina Felgenhauer, Andrew Ayi, Sharon Riobot, and the whole team of the delegation of German Industry and Commerce for bringing together German and Nigerian representatives and companies from the renewable energy sector to discuss and learn about opportunities and challenges. A couple of months ago, I had the chance to travel to Nigeria on the occasion of the West African Clean Energy and Environment Trade Fair. This allowed me to exchange with numerous partners and representatives from the Nigerian energy sector, and I must say that I was impressed by their positive commitment to green hydrogen production as one of the long-term solutions in Nigeria's energy transition plan. One of these representatives is the president of the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, Mr. Ayo Ademula. And it is a pleasure to have him with us today. I'm very much looking forward to his input on the state of renewable energy development in Nigeria. At this point, I would like to thank all the participants for being part of this event. Please take this opportunity to take a deep dive into the world of green hydrogen production for off-grid use in Nigeria. Follow the discussions, ask questions, engage in conversations, network with each other, create new ideas, and most importantly, get connected. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Thank you for that. All right, we will be going into the next session, which will have the presentations, and I'm very, very excited to be introducing our first speaker for today. With me, I have Mr. Ayo Ademilua. Mr. Ayo is the president of the foremost Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, RIAN. He's also the CEO of A4&T. He holds a master's degree in business administration with a specialization in finance and a Bachelor of Science degree in accounting. So I is also an alumnus of the Lagos Business School, of Oxfam Business Development Program, Stanford Business School, Sea Transformation Program, and a board member of AMDA. He has over 12 years of experience in the finance industry, and he has worked in several banks in Nigeria, including the GTB, before proceeding to pursue his entrepreneurial endeavors as CEO of A4&T Power Solutions. Today, Mr. Ayo will be talking to us about the state of renewable energy development in Nigeria and the progress in energy transition plan. Please welcome Mr. Ayo.
Good morning, everybody, and it is so great to be here. Nice to see Patricia once again, Sharon, and everybody in the room. It's exciting to see how we've been moving the conversation on green hydrogen forward, and I'm particularly happy and excited to be part of this conversation. It's great to see my colleagues and everybody in the industry here. So today we're going to be talking about the state of the renewable energy in Nigeria, and also some highlights on the updates on the ETP that I know that a lot of people will be looking forward to hear about right now. So please, Sharon, if you could please let me put up the presentation so that we can start. Or would you want me to present from my system?
You can go ahead if that's okay.
Okay, let me try and see if we can share again. Just a moment, please. Okay, great. Thank you. So please, next slide, please, Andrew. So currently, I want us to take a look at this diagram. It shows us the map, shows us the way where we have the renewable energy sources in Nigeria currently. This is the map of Nigeria. You see the places where we can have solar energy, in abundance, where we can have hydro at their best, where we can have biofuel at their best, and where we can have wind at their best. Can we move to the next slide, please? In terms of connection to the grid today, from renewable energy sources, we have hydro leading the pack. The second map that we're sharing shows the grid connected, generation plants in Nigeria. So today, we have about 2.2 megawatts, a little over 2.2 megawatts contributed by renewable energy as of today in the total generation potential of 13.8 megawatts. And leading the pack is hydro. Now, even with the hydro leading the pack, we have solar coming up. We have a few wind that we've been trying to work on as projects to commission. But I see that the hydro seems to be the one that is going to be helping us to drive our target in terms of the target towards the energy transition plan of Nigeria. We have solar projects also coming on because of the abundance of sunlight that we have, most especially from the northern part of the country down to the middle and to the south. And it presents a lot of opportunity for everybody around those regions to be able to harness to generate power. As we all know that for the green hydrogen that we're all talking about, renewable energy becomes a very important resource to have, which is one of the things positioning Africa in the spotlight in this new movement towards green hydrogen. I've always discussed with colleagues in the industry that we currently have we have massive land opportunities in the northern part of the country, while we also have some very good land opportunities in the southern part for generation of power via solar. And we can also have the wind on the shore part and also in the other side of the countries where we can harness towards the production of green hydrogen. I know that we all know that it's important to have renewable energy and also to have presence of water as we're in producing green hydrogen. And having Nigeria have that mass and have the two components positions us in a very good way to lead Africa, not just sub-Saharan Africa, but to lead Africa in this drive towards a green hydrogen production. Can we have the next slide? So currently, these are the ways that we have been trying to utilize solar in Nigeria. We have grid-tied solar projects that are currently getting reactivated by the federal government. So we have those 14 independent power plant solar projects that were supposed to feed into grid that Nigeria has been on for a while, but there have been some challenges. But I'm glad that, last year, the federal government reactivated engagement with the developers in this project. And currently right now, they're trying to ramp up activities so that we can get those projects online. If we combine 10 of those projects in 10 states, we have the capacity of generating 1 gigawatt, of energy, of power through solar. And this will be going directly onto the grid. I know that the government is also trying to find a way to provide pipelines for decentralization in the distribution of this upload as we're uploading on the grid. We've also been utilizing solar through the decentralized solar projects through off-grid and also interconnected mini-grids. Currently today, we have over 100 mini-grids in Nigeria scattered across the north, the south, and the west and the east part of the country. And there is a massive effort, which I'm going to be sharing on my next slide, of achievement that we've been having from the World Bank assisted NEP Nigeria Electrification Project. Great, thank you. So from the NEP right now, we can see that we've been able to touch over 5 million lives. We have over 1 million connections as of today. And from the NEP project, of course, the NEP project is running through mini grid development. It's also doing solar home system distribution. We're also doing powering of education, that's for universities, energizing education. And we're also doing, agriculture, agro-producing, powering and energizing. So all this massive effort is gradually providing decentralized renewable energy power systems at different levels of the regions, both in the rural, the peri-urban, and the urban. Now, the beauty of this for our drive towards green hydrogen is that we're currently having existing renewable energy power plants that we can leverage on the excess energy generated in the day that's still utilized towards production of green hydrogen. We have some plants that are above 100 kilowatts, 200 kilowatts. We have some going at 500 kilowatts, and we have some that are very close to 1 megawatt. Now, what we've been seeing from trend practically is that most of the time during the day, we have unutilized power. So there is a need for us to channel this unutilized energy during the day into production of green hydrogen. Yes, we know that right now there are challenges with the technologies. We're also trying to get it right. But I look forward to the day that we can replace the diesel generator in an hybrid or gas generator in the hybrid system with green hydrogen. Yes, I know that we have, in terms of cost, we're considering that this is going to really be expensive right now, but I'm sure that just as we have it in the energy transition plan, that we will leverage on the back of gas for now till we get to the end where we'll be able to use green hydrogen. By the time we're able to use green hydrogen, instead of maybe more expensive storages at that time, or of course, the fossil gas or fuel, we will be having a lot of great advantage for clean climate, through the green hydrogen by then. So Nigeria having this decentralized PV plants in different locations in the regions positions us properly for the baseline. I imagine us having a big solar farm in the northern part of the country or different parts of the northern part of the country. If you take a focus at the central, north central, like Niger State, that has River Niger flowing by it and also have massive land for, solar PV farms. If we can have a concentrated PV farm there and we can leverage on the flowing River Niger and have a production place for green hydrogen, we can from there channel. Yes, I know that we're also discussing on transportation, but there is nothing that stops us from also positioning, factories and manufacturing firms for derivatives of green hydrogen in those places, where we can turn them to ammonia, where we can try to do green steel. Of course, Niger is also not far from Ajaokuta steel mill. So there is a lot of potentials right now in the renewable energy industry for Nigeria in the years to come on the back of the ETP. Can we go to the next slide? So on the ETP, we are aware, I'm sure we know what the Nigeria ETP is about. Of course, we're trying to focus on 5 major areas that we see as contributing to the CO2 emission in our country. And in line with the NDC, try to see how we're going to bring this to net zero by 2060. We're looking at the industry, we're looking at the oil and gas, we're looking at the transport sector, we're looking at the cooking sector, and we're looking at the power sector. So using renewable energy, of course, as the driving backbone. So we are positioning ourselves, of course, the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, to be the driving wheel towards the achievement of this energy transition plan. Next slide, please. So I'll quickly share with you some of the highlights and where we are right now in Nigeria as regards the energy transition plan as shared by the Nigeria Energy Transition Office. We have the global launch, of course, last year. We have, to date, the HETO has been able to raise over $3.6 billion. Right now, we're trying to target, we have a deal, there's a deal that the HETO has that's looking at 5,000 megawatts and 2,500 megawatts hour generation, over the next years. We're also seeing situations whereby right now we're trying to have some affiliations and corporations with some bigger PV organizations and bigger project developers in the west and the eastern part of the world to see how we can handshake to drive the growth of this target. We at REN are positioning to see how we can support the Nigeria Energy Transition Office towards driving to the hinterland of the country as we plan to see projects activated at different parts of the region of the country. I do not have so much time on the presentation today. I know that on the watch I have about 15 minutes. So I would like to round up with this. We have a great potential for renewable energy, considering all the resources that we have in Nigeria for hydro, for biofuel, for solar, for wind, for thermal. We have the resources there. The government has demonstrated willpower for the past 3, 4, 5 years in terms of the plans, the policies, and the frameworks that they've been rolling out. On the back of the regulatory authorities, even like NEC for power, Ministry of Environment on the side of environmental imports, and the remaining other ministries and parastatals that are supporting. We at the association also have our members ready, eager, gingered up to be able to deliver, those renewable energy projects. I see that we can bring to have a convergence of actualizing the green hydrogen dream of Nigeria if we are able to cooperate and continue in the conversation and leverage on existing projects and assets in the renewable energy sector right now and the ones that are planned to be built, and we try to find a way to drive the conversation and drive the models that we're deploying in a way that it will bring results that tallies with the targets and the milestones that we have set on the ETP. I want to thank the AHK people once again. And thank everybody for listening. We look forward to great works that can still be done in the industry. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ayo. That was a very, very enlightening session. You know, I loved the fact when you said that RIAN is positioning to be the driving wheel of the ETP. That was very, very assuring and reassuring as well. And I also, you know, for participants that came on this call wondering, is there really a potential for the deployment of a hydrogen economy? I believe that your questions are gradually being answered already. Thank you so much once again for that presentation. All right, we're moving on to the next presentation, and the presenter is a very, very renowned expert. He was a recipient of the Dutch government doctoral scholarship and worked on enhancing the efficiency of thin film nanocrystalline silicon solar cells. Upon his return to Nigeria after his PhD, he headed the photovoltaic unit of the National Center for Energy Research and Development at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, before joining the University of West Bohemia, Pilsen, in Czech Republic as a postdoctoral fellow in 2013. For 1.5 years in Czech Republic, he worked on developing silicon quantum dots and superlattices as efficiency enhancers in multi-junction solar cells in projects jointly funded by the EU and the Czech government. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about Dr. Solomon Agbo. He's a senior scientist and project manager at FZ Jülich in Germany. Welcome, Mr. Agbo. Thank you for being here. All right, we have
thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So I hope you can hear me.
Crystal clear.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sharon and the entire team in AHK for inviting me to make this presentation. And I also welcome you in the audience. I would share my screen. Can you see my slides? Please let me know if you can see my screen.
We can see your slides. We can see your slides.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have just 10 minutes and I will quickly get through. So I am supposed to talk about the potential of green hydrogen production in Nigeria. I think that one thing we have established over again and again, and our last speaker already also mentioned, that we have a lot of potential in Nigeria, but also in Africa in general. So I wouldn't dwell so much on really establishing the fact that we have renewable energy potential, but the possibility of really utilizing this. And I think that's where all of this is heading. So to start, I just want to give an acknowledgement first to the H2 Atlas Africa project team in Jülich, where we have done all of the things that we have done in the last 2.5, getting to 3 years now, looking at the potential of generating green hydrogen from across West and Southern Africa. And then I also like to thank our strategic partners, so the West African Science Service Center for Climate Change and Land Use in Ghana, and then the counterpart in Southern Africa, SASCAL in Namibia. They have really helped us throughout these years with data, with a number of the local contexts that we have brought into the H2 Atlas Africa project. And then I would like to start by just showing the slide. Probably you have looked at this before. So this is a report by the IEA a couple of years ago. So you see here a comparison between Nigeria and a few other countries. So you see Brazil, South Africa, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Nigeria. So the percentage you see tells you is basically how much the population has changed, by how much percent the population has increased between 1990 and in the last few years. So you see for Nigeria, for example, the population has not increased as much as ours, but then you see a very big change, the very big growth in the total energy generation. And you see for Nigeria is basically flat. So basically in the last 30 years, we have somewhere been around in the same place. And this is a bad situation. You look at Ghana, South Africa, and Brazil. So you look at the energy consumption per capita. You see, it's not anywhere. If you compare Nigeria with South Africa, it's several orders of magnitude difference. So you see that this has really a lot of implications. So one, you see it obvious in this graph. So this showed a very clear indication of how the population is, and in the last few years, Nigeria overtook India as the largest population of poor people. So this is the implication of what you see before the energy, or do not have sufficient energy for the local people. And then another thing you see also is the level of unemployment. So actually this data is from the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. So if you put the number of unemployment and the underemployment in Nigeria is barely 50%, probably this is even higher currently. So it paints a very big picture that makes it very clear that the fact that we still struggle with energy availability has a lot of implication for the young people. Of course, for the environment, I didn't put the slide here, but you still continue to have the issue of deforestation in our rural communities because we still struggle with not having enough energy to drive local activities, but also to drive our economy. Now, having said this, I put this slide just to put Africa in context. This is from IRENA, one of their latest studies. So it's obvious that Africa as a whole, we have a big renewable energy resources, but we still lag behind. So a large part of Africa still is left out. So you still have, like you see here, it's only 20% of the global investment in renewable energy in the last 2 decades were made in Africa. And we have still less than 3% of global renewable energy jobs in Africa. So if you look at these numbers in context, 2% out of all of the things happening in the world makes it still obvious that we still have a long way to go, despite being a region with really one of the greatest potential in terms of renewable energy. We still struggle a lot with investments. And these are some of the issues I think will be very important that going forward, we try to discuss. Why is it that despite having huge investments in Africa to, as a way to indicate that these resources exist here. The prospects, it is very clear. So Africa has, as a whole, we have one of the economies in Africa, and this has been so in the last couple of years. So huge potential in terms of market, in terms of job, in terms of economic development. But these are prospects, and like I showed in the slide 15, to reflect on these prospects or this potential. And of course, I wouldn't also want to overstate the benefits of having hydrogen within the energy mix of Nigeria. One, of course, it provides us opportunity to start to explore also the more renewable energy resources that are still available and up to now have not been fully exploited. In one way, this of course would help to meet the green target, but also address the issue of climate change. Another very big value this Nigeria is of resource diversification. So if you're a Nigerian, you would know that we still have the issue of the fact that we still rely heavily on oil and gas as the main revenue source. So if we're able to diversify a little bit, this would of course create more jobs, but also be good for the economy. And of course, the other value is revenue and increased their contribution in terms of addressing the issue of climate change, like I said before. So I see slides just to show you the potential of green hydrogen in Nigeria. So what you see on the left is onshore wind potential, and then you see on the right open field PV potential. So what we have done here, so we look at the land, the entire land area that's available in the country. Based on some criteria, we had to exclude some land area that cannot be utilized for green hydrogen production. So we have land areas for agriculture, land area for housing, land area that are within reserved areas like for reserved forests and things like that. And of course, taking into consideration how the population is growing, and then the fact that also the rural communities, the urban areas are expanding. So where to place your PV infrastructure, and then you're able to determine, or also your wind infrastructure, then you're able to estimate basically how much renewable energy you are able to generate per square meter of the land, or even within available land area. So you see here we have barely 42% of the land area that's available for onshore wind. This is huge. And for people, we have just about 6.6%. Somebody will say, how can this is? So you can, of course, areas, but then that would mean you have to clear more and more forests. That would also mean that you would have to have less and less land available for urban areas that are expanding, but also for rural communities that are growing, or for land area that should be available for agriculture. So we were really, really very conservative with these numbers. And I think that this will be the way to this. You can always, depending on what you can always extend. But for us, we chose to really take it this conservative. Of course, after we have had a series of consultation with the local partners who have helped us within the project. Okay, so just to give an indication of some of the key findings. So we have the levelized cost of hydrogen, which we have today. Then you have the levelized cost of hydrogen, which you can have in the next, maybe by year 2050. Now, I want to say very clearly here that if you look at this, I have put here 25% expansion. So what this means is if you can of up to 25% of what's, of course, if you go much lower, if you go to 1%, for example, of what the costs will come down. But again, we thought that it's better to be a bit more reasonable. So that's why we chose 25%. For example, so you have now a minimum and a median average, the values that are between 3.8 and then 5.4 euros per kilogram, respectively. But then when we go further, up by 20 degrees of Celsius. What's also expected that electrolyzers and some other components for hydrogen production will also follow the same trend. You would see that the levelized cost of hydrogen is projected to come down, significantly in 20-30 years from now. So these are numbers in terms of potential that exists in Nigeria. I would like to mention that we have in various parts of Nigeria issue with groundwater. So we have done this analysis based on the fact that we did a groundwater availability assessment. So where we consider only what we call sustainable groundwater. So groundwater that is rechargeable, groundwater that is able to address all the other water needs and do this over its sustainable long term. So we had to look at project to be sure that you do not have an issue with water conflict if you have to use groundwater. And then maybe the question would also arise, why groundwater? We use groundwater because it's fresh water. And we use groundwater because it's also climate change. Groundwater is one of the water sources that is least most affected. The climate change is past, so it's really one of the big sources of water that can be used for green hydrogen products. Salinated water comes with an additional cost, even though this is also very significant from the another. And this perhaps would be the way to go, especially for regions that are really hard hit by scarcity of groundwater. Not sustainable groundwater yield. Okay, so if you put all of this together, you would see as a national, as a country, we have nearly 5,000 picowatt hour per area of energy that exists in Nigeria. So these are in terms of numbers. Like I said, a very big issue is not in quantifying or really in determining how much potential exists. This is very relevant, but beyond this, it's what we have to do locally on ground to make sure that these potentials can be exploited. And we have not built into these technical numbers. So you have not looked at, for example, the prevailing policy issues, the prevailing legal issues, the prevailing sociocultural issues that may either add to cost or that may also impact availability of land and water for green hydrogen production. And these are very important, extremely very important, but often neglected issues that we would have to address when it has to do with irrigation. Okay, I try to wrap up now. The application is obvious so that green hydrogen can be utilized for energy storage in the transport sector, really across all sectors, transports, wherever. So it's a huge opportunity. And I think that we really have to be part of this movement that's actually rolling right now. That's so whether it's for electricity generation or industrial application in the chemical industry, several opportunities for the application. Okay, with that, I wrap up. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agbo. This has also been very, very insightful as well. And I was really happy to see the slide where you talked about the benefits of green hydrogen in Nigeria. We talked about resource diversification, revenue source, increased access. It's really, really interesting to know that these things are very possible with the deployment of a hydrogen economy. Thank you once again for that amazing presentation. Okay, I'm sure the participants are really getting well, well informed this morning, and we'll be going into the next session now. But just to inform the participants, in case you have questions for the speakers, either Dr. Agbo or Mr. Ayo, please, you could just send it to us and we'll forward it to them. Because of time constraints, we might able to answer all the questions on the live session. So please forward your questions, your comments, and your concerns, if there are any, to us on the chat. We would also be dropping an email on energy@lagosahk.de for you to send your questions as well, and we can assure you that we'll forward them accordingly. All right, so the next session will be a panel discussion, and this panel discussion is going to be giving us a private sector perspective on the roadmap to scaling up the hydrogen economy in Nigeria. And this morning, I'm very happy to be introducing Chigozie Weke Eze. He's very, very sound and knowledgeable when it comes to hydrogen deployment, and he will be anchoring and moderating the panel session for this morning. So Mr. Chigozie is the founder, Integrated Africa Power, and he has been working at the intersection of energy, sustainability, and international cooperation in Africa for more than 12 years. More recently, his work engages with hydrogen as a continuum of energy transition and development. He's the founder of Integrated Power Africa, AIP, based in Bonn, Germany, and a board member at Hydrogen Africa, based in Paris, France. Mr. Chigozie, welcome. we're happy to have you here this morning. And Mr. Chigozie will be introducing his panelists. But before he goes ahead, I would just give you a breakdown or the names of the people that will also be engaging in this conversation. So this morning we have Ms. Ifeoma Malo from the Clean Tech Hub. We have Mr. Olufemi Odegbaro from PowerGen Renewable Energy, and we have Mr. Emmanuel Etadehi from FMDQ Group. So I would now open the floor to Mr. Chigozie to continue the moderation for the panel session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sharon, and the whole AHK team for this very interesting session. We do not have a lot of time. We have about 25 minutes, but this is very interesting because in this particular panel and session, we would hear also from private sector, those whom we believe will play a very major role in driving the application of hydrogen, especially because they're also working in the energy field, renewable energy field, especially off-grid application. So we will hear from them in a number of areas. So without wasting a lot of time, I would give the floor. I mean, we've heard a lot of nice things also from previous presenters, some of the challenges that are there, some of the huge opportunities that are there, some of the things we have to set our eyes on going forward. And I would like to give the floor to each of our panelists to just give a quick introduction of themselves and then also kind of use another 1 minute to kind of react to all the things that I've had from our presenters today. I'll give the floor first to Ifeoma Malo. Yeah, if you can start.
Thank you, Chigozie. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great to be here. And I really enjoyed listening to all of the presentations that happened earlier. My name is Ifeoma Malo. I'm a co-founder for Clean Technology Hub. We're a hybrid hub focused on energy access and climate change. And under our energy access portfolio, hydrogen is one of the technologies that we look at to drive renewable energy across sub-Saharan Africa. Do we wait after the introduction to then react? Does everybody go through the introduction? Okay, so I'll stop there and let others go ahead. Because
why don't you react start immediately? Yeah.
Okay. No, so like I said, it's been great listening to all of the other speakers. And one of the things that struck me is how in just about 36, maybe 36 months, hydrogen has become a very topical issue, not just in Nigeria, but across the region. And this is a clear indication of the growing interest in making this a viable means of electrifying communities, not just in Nigeria, but in other West African and African countries. What does that mean? It means that, outside of a lot of the work that governments and donor finance institutions or multilateral institutions or development partners are doing, that there's now going to be a need to have a concerted focus from private sector to see the potential, both the investment and return potentials for hydrogen for investors, and doing the proper mapping of what the scale of return will be, not just in terms of economic returns, but also in terms of social and political returns. And that makes it imperative that we begin to look at all of the indicators that the private sector would want to see to make this an investable area for them in Nigeria. And what are those things? What do they want to see? I mean, I don't know if to begin to talk about them now, but I think some of the things I'll just highlight is data. We still don't have a lot of data when it comes to hydrogen. There still needs to be some work done on the legislative framework, which will give a lot of comfort to investors that are bringing their money in. And also then a proper framework to help accelerate the adoption of hydrogen, working with the Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria and even the African Mini Grid Developers Association to make sure that we're able to coordinate better the private sector for those who want to deploy hydrogen as part of their technology offerings in the renewable energy sector. I'll stop there because I have a lot more to say, but I'm also conscious of time. Back to you, Chigozie.
Thank you so much, Ife, for that. I'll also now give the floor to Emmanuel Etadehi. for your brief introduction, sir, and also what your reaction so far to the presentations that have taken place.
Thank you, Chigozie, and good morning to all participants. And let me start by saying it's a rare privilege to be among excellent people who are subject matter experts in this very nascent but important area of technology that we are looking at to help us achieve our transition to net zero by 2060, as outlined in our nationally determined contributions as a country. And the participants and a collaborating partner with other countries in the Paris Agreement. Let me just make a slight correction. I'm here as the Executive Secretary of the Financial Center for Sustainability, Lagos. Yes, I do wear two hats, but the hat that I'm wearing here now is the hat for Financial Center for Sustainability, Lagos, as the Executive Secretary. Thank you very much. My reaction is straightforward and simple. It is exciting to hear everything that's been presented by the different presenters, even the introduction from the first speaker. And I'd like to say that we need to carry the financial sector participants along, because none of this will materialize without funding. And if you do an analysis of the solar adoption so far, either on an individual basis or industrial basis or corporate basis, I dare say we have not hit 1% total adoption relative to our population. I dare say, or maybe 1%, because you said 5 million per persons have been reached, right? So 5 over 216 million, you can do the maths. All right. I think we need to carry the financial sector along. We need to carry the populace along. People have barely come to terms with solar energy. They barely understand it. They barely appreciate it and its impact. Many homes are not yet electrified through solar. It should be, because of the abundance of the natural elements producing solar energy. The sun burns our skin every day and literally roasts our skin in some part of the country. I like the, I'm so excited to hear some of the wonderful propositions by Mr. Ayo, the president of RIAN. How I wish from his mouth to God and then to Nigerians. So he just implements the Niger concentrated solar plant immediately and go ahead and produce green hydrogen, go ahead and electrify Jakarta, go ahead and produce storage facilities to help us distribute green hydrogen. But we're a country of, sad to say, talkers, planners. Implementation is a challenge. We've been talking about green hydrogen in the national energy plan since 2014, or maybe even before that. We need to work hard. That is the most important thing I want to mention. Has it happened before? Elsewhere? Yes. Oh, yes, in Tangiers, in Morocco. Take a trip there. There's a concentrated solar plant. There's wind, there's solar. In the desert in Morocco, there's wind, there's solar, there's hydro. Combined together, Morocco is going to be exporting, or has already started exporting energy to Europe. African country exporting energy to European markets. So if it's been done before, then it can be repeated on a larger and a far more successful scale. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I also would give the floor to Mr. Debaro Oluwafemi to also introduce himself, his company, and also give us a quick reaction to the presentations he has been hearing today.
Yeah, thank you, Chigozie. I want to thank the HK team for having me here. And I would like to, let me just introduce myself briefly. My name is Debaro Oluwafemi. I'm a business development manager for Rural Mini Grids, and I've been working in the mini grid space for the past 6 years. Prior to working with PowerGen, I did over a year with Rubitech. Then I've been working with PowerGen for like 3 years now. So these are exciting times, and there are a lot of opportunities, like we've seen in the past presentation from Mr. Solomon and from Mr. Ayo, the RIAN president. and a lot of opportunities to gain from exploiting green hydrogen, and ranging from storage to transportation, even agriculture and production as well. We need to align ourselves to fully exploit these opportunities. We already have renewable energy source in the country. We have wind, we have solar, and we have hydro already, and there are a lot of water resources in the country. And looking at the fact that we have a growing population and increasing energy demand, we need to just do the needful, align ourselves. Though there will be a lot of problems coming in, like Mr. Emmanuel mentioned, he mentioned the implementation problem, and also we know green hydrogen is expensive. So I think we just need to just align ourselves properly and just be focused as a country to gather more data and to just seek the support we need in tapping the green hydrogen potential. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I come back again to the audience, to the panelists, sorry, to begin to also ask some more specific questions to each of you, based on what you might be able to specialize in. If I ask you again, I mean, you've mentioned that, of course, data is very, very important, you know, to get the figures and making these plans. Some of them are already going on. We also have had several promises from the government side, also relating to the ETP, where you see gaps, where a hydrogen economy could emerge out of the you know, mini grid of grid systems. You've been playing in that field as well. How feasible do you think that hydrogen economy could emerge, given you know, the current existing policies and framework currently existing? You know, how feasible do you see this happening?
So thank you for that question, Chigozie. I think it is very feasible. And I think one of the things that we should look at is what might be going on in other countries, and how we can actually learn best practices. One of the things I think we need to do better at is not reinventing the wheel, and looking at countries that are far ahead of us in specific technologies or even in some industries. We have tools that show that Nigeria has a huge potential for green hydrogen electricity generation, and that there are so many places. I mean, I listened to Ayo's presentation in Nigeria with the maximum green hydrogen producible from groundwater. And this is concentrated mainly in the south, southeast, and northeast. But yet we don't have hydrogen as part of our current energy transition plan. I know that there are talks about it. But if we're looking at the 2060 net zero target, and at the fact that 40 other countries now have a hydrogen strategy, they actually have their own hydrogen plan. That should tell us that one of the first things we should do, much in the same way when we started the mini grid sector in Nigeria, we had a mini grid regulation. That was something that needed to be put in place, despite the fact that there had been a lot of mini grids that had been built before that regulation came to be. But look at what happened when the regulation came. There was an explosion of foreign investors, private sector investors in Nigeria, indigenous investors, and developers who then decided that this was now an industry or a sector that they wanted to play in. And I think that learning is something that we can actually translate to the hydrogen sector. India, for instance, is presently considering a proposal to make it mandatory for fertilizer plants and oil refineries to purchase green hydrogen as part of their plans to cut their country's dependence on fossil fuel. This is another great example for Nigeria. If we can follow India's lead in privatizing the power sector, which we've done already, we can also follow their lead in opening up demand for green hydrogen from the commercial and industrial sector, especially if places like Dangote Refinery and their fertilizer plants can act as inspirations and inspire other investors that are into the oil refinery to consider green hydrogen as an option. You know, the German office has set up a hydrogen office in Angola and Nigeria. And this is a great thing. And this is to facilitate dialogue with those fossil fuel exporting economies. We also need to be able to leverage that office a bit more strategically, right? And begin to look at how to use members of the Renewable Energy Association to partner with German foreign investors or developers who want to come in and develop hydrogen projects in Nigeria, and create the framework for what that partnership would look like, so that the Renewable Energy Association members have a level of comfort and confidence that their own private sector interests will be taken care of. And then lastly, one of the things that I think is important to note is that right now, we'll probably, for the hydrogen sector, Nigeria will probably have to rely to a greater extent on foreign direct investment to drive its hydrogen generation industry. That's actually part of the sort of data we need to get into to find out who are the big players here globally, where are they located, what are they already investing in, find that sort of data so that there can be a targeted sort of partnership building that occurs between the Nigerian developers and investors and foreign direct investment sectors. And lastly, one of the other things that I want to say is, gosh, I'm drawing a blank. It was just at the tip of my head. I've been talking a lot. If it comes back to me, I'll make the comments. There was another last comment I was going to make, but let me hand it back to you, Chigozie.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much. You've made really very, very interesting points. Very interesting points. I mean, when regulation comes, when government shows some act of seriousness, the private sector usually reacts. But of course, one of the challenges of the sector is also then financially related. And this is where I also want to bring in Emmanuel to also comment more on this, since you're wearing the hat of the Executive Secretary of the Financial Center for Sustainability here. Where do you see, the role of financiers, especially from development financial institutions or international development community? Where do you see their role being more fine-tuned in promoting green hydrogen economy in Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Chigozie. And again, I'll say let's start from the basics. To what extent would you say the financial market players, who the regulators and the actual players, and who are the players? The pension fund administrators, the insurance regulators and insurance companies, the banks. To what extent are these players, aware or understand, or to what extent can we say they understand the concept of green hydrogen? There are 20-something odd banks in Nigeria. Let's do a dissectioning of their loan books. What portion of their loan books can be attributed to even the plain normal solar energy, renewable energy for solar? How many of them are lending to SMEs, to mid-sized companies, and to big companies who are in the solar energy space? And the Iranian president can attest to that. How many of his members can easily just walk into a bank and get funding to establish the projects? You guys can attest to that. So we need to start by carrying the financial sector players along. There's a massive role they can play. But like you mentioned earlier on, and like Ife mentioned, government needs to lead the way. In the countries where we've seen that some of these new technologies are being driven, government has been involved. There's no way you can do this kind of new investments because they are intensive industries. They need, large sums of funding, new technologies. You need to get government to lead it. So government can reorganize its borrowing plans and raise another green bond to spearhead the way. The market for green bonds is growing in Nigeria. There have been 6, 7 odd green bonds in Nigeria, 2 from the government, 2 or 3 from the government, 2 from the government, and the remaining 4 from the private sector. Only one solar company has raised a bond, a green bond. That's One Watt Solar by Dr. Jubril. I know because every single green bond that's been done in the country, I've been a part of it. So we need to enhance that space and let the government lead the way by issuing a green bond. For example, start that CCP that Mr. Ade mentioned, the concentrated solar power plant in Niger, just by the side of the Niger, and use that as a means of producing green hydrogen. That's a viable project. If you say we are borrowing and our borrowing cost, service cost is increasing, the size of our borrowing is increasing, there's no problem with that if that borrowing is targeted at such transformational industrial projects like this. Projects have the tendency to change the entire economy and solve our energy poverty problem. So the financial sector has a great chance to show themselves as key contributors to our net zero plan by embracing the concept of green hydrogen, funding the projects. But we have a duty, we, the stakeholders here, to also sensitize them, create their awareness, build their capacity by letting them understand the basics. So I need more of these webinars, seminars, conferences. I need many more of them iterated on different days and different scales to get that sector fully integrated. And then the government should also spearhead the way by increasing their borrowings on the green bond space, so that other private sector players can then piggyback on that and begin to, seek funding, implement projects in that space. So the private sector has a great part to play, massive part to play. Green bonds, green CPs, green equities, different instruments, sustainable finance instruments that can help us build out that space. And where we are at FC4S, we are ready to work with any partner that wants to take advantage of that space. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would quickly also come to Odebaro. You've also worked in business development and technical aspects. Can you also kind of give us an idea of the practicability of this and how government helping in regulations, for instance, and financing angle as well, helping has, from your own experiences, improved the deployment of renewables?
Yeah, thanks, Chigozie.
Yeah, we cannot hear you. Can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me, Chigozie?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
So yeah, I'll speak based on my experience in the mini grid sector, and we all know how expensive it is to develop a mini grid. It's quite expensive, and the reason why is making it more feasible nowadays is because there are grants available and there are funding available. And like if you said, due to the government regulations, more private investors are coming to the country, and there are being lots of mini grid now. So I mean, yeah, so that's one way by which we can make all this can make it more feasible for it to happen in the country. And also this is something that we also need technical support from development finance. Aside from getting grant, we need technical support as well, in form of training, seminars, webinars. We need to understand this technology. We need to have a deep understanding of technology. We need to get trainings, probably on safety and some other aspect of it. And also we need to facilitate partnerships between private media developers and probably, let's say, oil and gas companies, because I think they're the ones that are looking that are kind of more interested in developing green hydrogen fuel in the country. So I think these are the things that we need from government. These policies need to be put in place to support private developers, oil and gas companies, and they need to be roundtable meetings, roundtable discussions to set goals, to discuss problems, to discuss the way forward and the steps that we need to take in pushing this forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would then have another round of questions to us all, and then we would also be ending it there because of time. Okay, so I would begin again with Ify. I want us to begin to articulate. I mean, Nigeria is a very peculiar case where you also have, as you have also heard, a huge energy access deficit. We're also kind of dealing with diversification of energy sources and pursuing energy transition. Can you tell me how green hydrogen comes into this space? Do you think it has any limiting effect, or does it have enhancing effect? And under which conditions would this happen? And what kind of challenges do you see on the road? Ify.
Thank you, Chigozie. And let me say, because I sort of forgot what I wanted to say before, but I think Emmanuel hit the nail on the head. You know, when we were starting to draft the mini grid regulations and working with NEC, you know, our stakeholders and giving feedback, one of the things that we omitted to do, which Emmanuel has been hammering on, is getting the private sector and the financial private sector now onboarded, getting them educated about what the mini grid sector is, how that sector works, so that they understand the mechanics of it a bit, to help them make investable decisions. What then happened was, when we had made all this rush of policies and regulations, not just even for the mini grid, even for solar home systems. And then we were now asking local investors in Nigeria to invest. Many of them didn't get it. They didn't understand the sector. They didn't understand the technology. They didn't understand the financing behind, the financial mechanics behind it. So when Emmanuel keeps saying you need to carry the investments community and the financiers along, I think that's a clarion call that we need to pay serious attention to. Now, to then answer your question about where we go from here in terms of green hydrogen. Like I said, one of the things that we have to decide as an industry, the renewable energy sector in Nigeria, is where would this hydrogen, which office would it be domiciled in? We need political backing and political push to make it a viable sector. For instance, the mini grid sector didn't really take off until REA came in hugely with the World Bank to begin to drive a lot of initiatives and a lot of projects in that sector. And then it's become a boom. But there were mini grids being developed before then. It's just that it wasn't, the uptake wasn't as much as it's become now. So to extrapolate that to the hydrogen sector, I think what we need to do first of all is decide, and maybe this will be under the ambit of the Renewable Energy Association, because these are the developers that are going to be the ones who are pushing things. Decide under what office this has to be in. Then decide, whether we can go and meet the Ministry of Power and the regulators to say we want a policy, a hydrogen policy specific to Nigeria. Here is the research that's been done, and there's a lot of research that's been done, and we thank the Germans for it. But here's the research that's been done. Can we begin to push for a policy framework to be in place? We have elections coming up very soon, so there will be a new administration in place. It's a good time to begin to sort of network and make a FaceTime with a lot of the new decision makers that will be manning the power sector, and make hydrogen a big push for that to happen. And then lastly, I think one of the things that we talk about often is partnerships, but we also have to look at the hydrogen sector from a regional cooperation sort of framework. And by regional cooperation, I'm talking also about ECOWAS. What do we want to do within the sub-region when it comes to hydrogen? So that it's not just a Nigerian thing. We're countries that are connected on the subcontinent at a level, and we all suffer the same energy deficits that you mentioned. So with the abundance of renewable energy and groundwater resources that we have across the continent, and the subcontinent being West Africa, we can begin to think about what kind of sub-regional vision on hydrogen energy policies should be. What do they look like? And can we do like a SWOT analysis on how that can be deployed? And we should also look at clear social and ecological criteria for this. For also importing green hydrogen, maybe ECOWAS can help define what those criteria would be. And then this close collaboration between ECOWAS countries and developed countries, I think sometimes, there's strength in numbers, because when Nigeria goes and does it by herself, sometimes the wins are smaller. So if we come as ECOWAS to do this development partnerships with foreign institutions or foreign development organizations, it could actually attract more value and more financing and investment as a whole. I'll stop there, and it's been a pleasure listening to everybody else and learning a lot also as we've gone along. Back to you, Chigozie.
Yeah, thank you so much for those points, Emmanuel. Also to have you reflect on the way forward for green hydrogen, given our challenges in energy access and our pursuit in energy transition.
Thank you very much. I think my colleague on the panel has really spoken very well. Very little to add. She has covered a lot, but I'll just go from a different tangent, from another angle. I think with the way we're getting new inventions, new concepts, new technologies, new ways of doing things coming out in what I term this fourth industrial revolution way, we should begin to think about how we can, build a bench strength of people, the key actors in this space. I've spoken so much about it. So apart from the financial sector, it's time we begin to integrate some of these subjects in our schools, in our curricula for schools, so people can learn, understand, because these are the guys that we have an average population age of 18 years in Nigeria. By the turn of the century, we'll be larger than maybe China in terms of population. Just by 2030 year or 2050 year, it could be 400 million or half a billion people. And the mean age is 18 years. It means whatever we're discussing here is for them, not for most of us. I'm already on the 5th floor. So we should be preparing the future for these new technologies that are coming out, because they're the ones that will benefit it more. So begin to train them, educate them, infuse this new. I thank the Germans for really setting up a facility here in Nigeria and Angola. We should draw from that initiative and begin to engage them to help us, so we can inculcate or incorporate these new technologies in our school system. And then in terms of who should coordinate it, I think we already have the National Council on Climate Change. To go to what Ify was talking about, it's very easy for me. The National Council on Climate Change should coordinate these things and have these collaborations with Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Power. Now, already the Director General of that council has written a seminar paper on green energy. It shows that he's thinking in the right direction. The next thing is for him to work with his colleagues in the different MDAs and build that this national green hydrogen policy, like other countries have done. So I've spoken to infusing this in educational systems. I've spoken to collaboration between the National Council on Climate Change, Ministry of Power, and then Ministry of Environment. So those are the two key things we can do going forward, because it's not just green energy, even solar energy. I'm not sure we've infused it properly into educational systems. Who are the guys that are going to be working on the systems, repairing them, installing them going forward? And what's our bench strength in that area? The current systems we use now, the fossil fuel systems, have enough engineers, enough technicians that have been educated over the years. That's why it's easy for us to. In your street, you have probably 5 generator mechanics that can work on your petrol generator. So how many people are skilled enough to work in this space? Let's begin to build that technical capacity, so that once you begin to do that, it becomes part of your national culture and the national bench strength that you have to ensure that that industry is embedded and entrenched in the country. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Emmanuel. Odebaro, I hope you still remember the question we are handling. I mean, how do you see things going forward in terms of green hydrogen, knowing also some of the challenges we face in the country?
I think the previous speaker have said it all, and I think I was expecting something positive, and but there are 4 things that we really need we need to put in place. And first thing, like if he said, the policies needs to be there, and for example, policy on green hydrogen, policy on the applications of green hydrogen, these needs to be put in place so as to attract private investors. And secondly, I think the funding as well, because it's very, very costly. Like I said, grants, financiers, everything needs to just come together, and we need funding to push this through. And also, on top of my head, I'm looking at synergy with regulators and private players, and this is very, very important, because the regulators might be saying might be putting something different, and the private players might be wanting something different. So, like we've seen in the mini-grid space with NERC regulations, and because, for example, the NERC regulations for mini-grid is capped at 1 megawatt, and this is a very serious constraint for private developers, because we've seen larger places that require more than 1 megawatt. So there needs to be synergy between private players and these regulators, and this will only happen when we have these sort of meetings, sort of roundtable discussions to address problems and to reach a middle point where we can all work together. And one more thing is training. And because no matter what we do, we need to understand this technology better. Like I said previously, we just need to come together to partner, and we need to partner together to make this work. for Nigeria. And I know probably by 2050 or so, I mean, things are going to change. There'll be more partnership between oil and gas companies and private developers in the middle space. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been a very rich panel discussion with very, very clear points stated. I will try to just summarize, the need for data and more research, one of which we will also hear today, which was conducted by HK. So we encourage more of data collection and research, more of trainings, more of educational systems, getting more skills to prepare us. Nigeria already did well in oil and gas, and some of these skills can actually switch into hydrogen economy. And that second point that was mentioned a lot is partnership, collaborations, coordinations, between different stakeholders in government and private sector, in the international development community as well. Everyone is involved in kind of making out these plans and thinking ahead, what works, what does not work. And also, of course, the importance of taking into consideration the regional cooperation. Some of the gaps or let's say challenges in one country can also be covered by another country, and coming together can also give us some certain level of economies of scale in getting financing or in kind of producing this hydrogen in a cheaper form. That was also very much alluded to. Another point was also kind of having a place, where people can say this is the focal point where we can go to in terms of green hydrogen. I mean, Emmanuel, you mentioned the National Council of Climate Change could be a go-to place. They can coordinate with other ministries and players. And Nigeria, of course, at this point needs to come up with a national green hydrogen policy or strategy. Concrete one that investors could look at and say, what, this is what we need to do or look at, in order to come to a country to be prepared. So, yeah, I want to thank you so much. And I hope that this kind of discussions will continue in the Nigerian context. I thank the panelists and also AHK for giving this platform for this discussion. Thank you so much. Over.
Thank you so much. I mean, I'm sure all participants will agree with me that this has been very, very remarkable and very informative. Thank you, Chigozie. Thank you, Ife, Emmanuel, and Oluwafemi. Thank you for that. And with that, we come to the end of the panel session on the roadmap to scaling up hydrogen in Nigeria, a private sector perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. I know we're way behind time, but this is the highlights of today's event. In this session, we will be sharing the results of the techno-economic potential of green hydrogen production in Nigeria. And I'm excited because personally, I also worked on this project. So it gives me great joy to see that we're sharing these results today. But before I introduce the anchor of this particular presentation, I would want to say that I know that we have a lot of questions, and like I said earlier on, you could just forward it to our email. Also, I see that participants are already networking on the chat. Just to remind you that there will be a networking session in this event as well at the end of the event, but I also see that you're catching up already, which is very, very excellent. All right, so going ahead, I will be introducing Andrew Aye. Andrew Aye is the head of the Competence Center, Energy and Environment at the Delegation of German Industry and Commerce in Nigeria. He's committed to expanding investment opportunities in clean energy, water, and circular economy sectors. He spearheads the critical initiatives to further energy and climate innovation, such as Power-to-X, solar-powered solutions, smart irrigation systems, and more. In over 7 years, Mr. Aye has worked on numerous projects in the sustainable energy and environment sectors in West Africa, primarily in Nigeria and Ghana. He has conducted thorough market analysis, advanced policy dialogues between the private and the government stakeholders, and provided business advisory services for international companies looking to expand in the West African sub-region. Andrew has been instrumental in the development of renewable energy, natural resources, and climate protection initiatives in Ghana. Andrew has a background in renewable energy, engineering, and economics with a focus on energy and environmental resources. So, Andrew, thank you very much. We'll have you now to present the results of the study.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Thank you very much, fellow speakers. Again, I think Sharon has done a very good job already by introducing me, and so I would not go to a bit further in that area. But then again, please bear with me as my presentation will be a bit more technical. But if you have any questions, please feel free to send us your questions via the chat box. And then also, if you have any further needs, you can also just contact us directly via email as well. Before I actually go a bit further into the particular presentation that we are having today, I would want to also acknowledge the strong support that we actually received from our key partners, be it the Ministry for the Environment, the German Federal Ministry for Environment, Nature Conservation, Nuclear Safety, and Consumer Protection. And then also we were able to work on this project directly with NAU GmbH. These are institutions stationed in Germany. And then also we worked with Rainer Lemoyne Institute, another research institution in Germany. And then also many thanks to Rubitech Power Solar, who was actually the case study that we actually used to conduct this particular research. I must say that this would not have been very possible with also the support of our colleagues in DIHK at the Chambers for Green Tech. They were also closely monitoring the project, ensuring quality control and support from their end as well. I must also extend my profound gratitude to my team, Sharon, Emmanuel, David, and the others that also worked on this particular research. It has actually been a very good journey for us, and I would like to share this as we go on. For most part of it, I know that we have foreigners, so I would just want to give you a quick highlight of what Nigeria looks like. And from this side, we actually have, I would say that Nigeria is literally situated it's actually situated in West Africa, between Benin and Cameroon. And then also it has habitants of about 200 million residents. The other important thing that we also used to consider in part of our research is also basically emanating from the energy transition plan, where it was also clearly published that there are over 90 million people in Nigeria that have no energy access. And then also about 80% of the operational capacity in Nigeria is actually being sourced from off-grid power, diesel or petrol generators. And then also a very, very promising or ambitious target with the energy transition plan is to ensure that we knock off all these diesel generators input by 2050. Now, to the main objective of this research was for us to actually ensure that we have 100, we ensure that we have about a promising result for 100% renewable energy sourcing, and then also to ensure that there was enough for electricity storage, and then also to look at the other external profiting margins or sales that we actually would need to consider in ensuring that this has been a very fruitful analysis. So to do this, we also went a bit further to look at the multi-vector simulator. We used the multi-vector simulator to conduct this particular research. We also gathered particular inputs from Rubitech, where we had the project descriptions and then also looking at the various probabilities, and then also ensured with the systems, the system simulator to also draw up a system flow process to understand what we're actually doing, and then also to ensure that we have the various economic, technical, and then environmental inputs also captured. So as I mentioned earlier, we used the Rubitech, and Rubitech also is particularly situated in Bamu State. Currently, Rubitech has a diesel generator with a particular supply from, with an additional supply from PV, and then also operating as a standalone site. Now to where we actually looking at, this is a flow diagram that explains the current setup of Rubitech, the mini grid they have, where they have a PV diesel genset, and then also hybridized with a PV, and then also a battery for storage. In our research and simulation, we also looked at the other parts where we would also look at 100% renewable energy generation, and then also further optimize other components or capacities to ensure that we have enough to proceed with the hydrogen storage, and then also to consider other cost variables as well. The other part was also for us to also consider the interest or particular area where we would also introduce another component, which is the hydrogen for sales. So in this other side, we have the compressors and others that were not initially captured in the scenario 2, as I showed earlier. So this has been the flow diagram for us. So as you can see above, in the blue shaded area is basically the status quo, and then the light green area is what we also introduced in the multi-vector simulator to ensure that we have a clean understanding of what we actually proposing for this particular study. So looking at the current data where we already received from Rubitech, we also identify that their status quo basically has about 53 diesel genset, 50 kilowatt sized diesel genset. It also has about 85 kilowatt peak of PV, and then also it has a battery unit of about 288 kilowatt hours. So that was basically the status quo. And then in the second scenario, as you can see in the second box, I would highlight it here just so you could follow the presentation. So in the second scenario, we actually knocked off the diesel genset and then also tried to optimize other capacities to ensure that we would be able to reach the same demand, and then see also the cost benefits of all these other changes. So we've actually amended here. The other thing again was also to expand the profit margin by also introducing other profits parameters by also considering sales and not only storage, but we also did the same. So we also had to knock off the diesel generator in this instance. Now to let you understand how we actually got the data, we also basically from Rubitech, one of the difficult parts we also gathered was that we had an inconsistent flow of power, where at the moment it was already identified that we had roughly, I'll round it up, about 170,000 kilowatt hours per annum. So this is actually a year data. And then to actually get this year data, we had to use time series data and all that to look at various minutes analysis. And then we were able to draw a graph to look at the pattern. As you can see the pattern, it looks, we realized that it wasn't smoothing enough, and it becomes a bit difficult for us to have a clear, or let's say a promising output. So we had to consider smoothing in some parts of the power supply. Now, as you can see, we also, if you compare the earlier load demand, we also, this is the initial load demand. And then we also try to modify it to ensure that the data in the early parts of January was almost the same as the end part of January. So we try to basically smoothing the power demand, looking at the site estimations. We use 1 month data, and then we extrapolated the 1 month's data across the year to see how this would actually be. So again, this is what we actually considered in our research. The other part again was also that we, based on that demand profile, we had a very smooth, let's say, graph which explained clearly what we actually wanted to do. So now we had a set peak demand at 38 kilowatts. And then we also we were also able to peg it at the annual demand of 171,000 kilowatts per annum. So basically, this is what we did. Most of the things we actually considered the 5-minute data, and then we just scaled it up. I'll just go forward. We had some data assumptions because of the various components we had. We considered the various CAPEX and OPEX values of each component, and then also we also considered other dispatch prices, efficiencies, and then lifetime or life cycle of the particular components in our analysis. So the other thing again was also another important factor was for us to also consider the operation and maintenance costs currently incurred by Rubitech, and then also to understand the particular, let's say, current profits that they actually consider. So right now, some of the connection tariffs they have is also indicated here. I tried to duplicate, make the conversions from euro to from Naira to euros, just so that you would also be able to understand, as we have audience from Europe as well. Also, we had the H2 sales price as well, where we also considered in our particular estimations. And then also for us as well, we also had our data from major other secondary data as well. So all of these were not primarily sourced from us. We use credible data to ensure that we have provided quite rigid and scientific outputs as well. So these are some of the assumptions we made and also data that we actually sourced, and we were able to get most of the results. Now, as you can see in the earlier scenarios, we also ensure that we also, as I mentioned to you earlier, we in the second scenario where we have scenario 2, scenario 3, where we had knocked off the diesel generator, so we had to also introduce the fuel cell and also the hydrogen storage to compensate for the removal of the diesel gen set. And then we also ensure that we optimize the capacities to a particular capability to a particular capacity to ensure that we also reach the estimated demand. And then also at the other side, in the scenario 3, we also ensure that we had fuel cell and also compressors, because now we are actually considering the sales of hydrogen in this area. To make things a bit clearer for you, I mentioned that we optimized the capacities. So what we basically did was to also consider the other parts. So in this, we also did some comparison just so that we would also understand clearly how the assets are faring against each other. Over here, we also can see clearly that we have about the blue indicating the scenario 2, and then the purple also indicating for scenario 3 as well. So we could also clearly tell that the battery is installed in scenario 2. So this battery is also not, it's installed in scenario 2 and 3. And also we also ensure that we also have the compressor only installed for scenario 3 and not also for scenario 2. The other KPIs that we also considered for us is also to look at the existing levelized cost, looking at the data we got, which was about 102 Naira per kilowatt hours, looking at the current data that we actually already got. And then we also realized that in our estimations, we realized that some of the our levelized cost actually reduced compared to the scenario 1. It rather reduced to about 96 Naira per kilowatt hours. And then also in scenario 3, where we also had the other components where we were also considering the sales, we had also about 90 Naira per kilowatt hours. So basically we reduced our levelized cost. And then also we also identified that looking at the other parameters such as the NPV which is the net present value, and then also upfront investment. In scenario 1, we also consider there's no upfront investment because this has already been set up or already invested in by Rubitech. So we did not really consider this. And then also we also only looked at the initial upfront investment, where we were also considering about 107 million naira. And then we also looked at the other components where we were also considering the compressors as well. So each values were each evenly compared here, just to give you a clear indication of what we were actually trying to achieve. The other part again was also we realized that the replacement cost was a bit higher for the current scenario because of the we know the diesel gen sets and all that. So we were also trying to look at each capacity and what it does, and then how we can actually knock it off with or balance it out with the profits that we actually already generate. One other thing that we try to do, which may also interest you a bit more in our particular research, was also to ensure that we achieve 100% renewable energy factor, and also ensure that we reduce the carbon footprint to 0. This is clearly in line with the energy transition plan in Nigeria. So we were actually very pleased to ensure that our result was clearly indicating these kind of results in these areas. The other thing, again, we also considered in the KPIs was to also look at the excess power, where the excess power could be used in storage for downtime supply, and then also we're also looking at where we could also use the excess to also sell the extra hydrogen and feed it into the grid as well. So these were some of the comparison that we currently had. In the scenario 2, we had about 22% excess power. In scenario 18, it reduced because we had about 4% of it already going or feeding into the grid or going out for sales as well. So this is basically what we had. Let me just go to next. In our research again, and from our secondary data, we also particularly pegged the sales of hydrogen to be at least 1,660 naira per kilogram. And then we were also pegging it at the then, I know we were pegging that at then 670 naira per liters for diesel prices. Please pardon me, we know the diesel prices have changed recently, having the current conditions, but at that time, we also considered also variation models of the cost of diesel. As you can see clearly here, we also were looking at the best prices, the best case prices, and also the worst case prices of diesel, where we were also looking at various margins. So we were very careful and also tried some sensitivity analysis to ensure that this could also be considered in such a plan. The other thing we also considered was also to look at the comparison, the levelized cost. I may have already mentioned this, but then we also realized that levelized cost was actually increasing quite steeply by with the current status quo. This was actually covering for the diesel because the diesel had a bit more of was actually more like a running cost or operational cost. And whereas we actually had kind of a smoothened or a normalized line over here where we actually had 100% contribution from the renewable energy storage. But however, over here in the sensitivity analysis, we were also ensuring that diesel prices may go a bit higher because of the higher cost of diesel. The other analysis or sensitivity cases we also considered was also to look at the variability of the prices in the sales prices of hydrogen, where we said in the best cases we had about 200, and then the worst, let's say we sell 200 naira per kilogram, and then we also increase it to when the sale of hydrogen has been about 2,000 naira per kilogram. So these sensitivity analysis were also considered. In this part of the study, I'll try to explain the graph briefly. And then if there's any other question, I would also try to answer them later at the end of the presentation. Over here, we were looking at the levelized cost. And with this particular side, with the hydrogen sales per price, you can also clearly see that when the price of hydrogen was about, when the levelized cost of hydrogen was about 200, there were a bit, sorry, was about 95-ish. There were, the price was of sales of hydrogen was a bit low. And then when it also balanced a bit more to about 85, it also was expected to be sold around this price margin. Now, comparing this levelized cost to the hydrogen stored, we also identified that the same value was actually being stored about 2,000 of hydrogen were able to be stored at the cost of this, at the sales price of this. And then we also realized that there were a bit more later on when it reached about 2,000. There was also a fall in the prices of hydrogen. So again, there was a pickup in the feeding grade, in the H2 feeding in of the grade over here. So these comparisons were what we actually considered in our research. And I'll just move on to the next part, which is also a bit interesting. In our next, this particular part, we were also considering the diesel consumption rates for scenario 1, comparing it to the other scenarios. Looking at the carrying capacity, we realized we would need about 227,700 liters per annum of fuel. And then we also realized that the renewable energy factor for the current status quo was about 25%, whereas ours was 100%. And then we also realized that the quantitative value of the carbon emission was a bit higher in scenario 1 compared to the others. We compare the various renewable energy generation powers, actual values, and then also compare the various shares of renewable energy over here. Now, what may interest some of the investors over here would be the yearly revenue generation, is that we also identify that looking at the values that we're working with and based on the assumptions, we were able to calculate that the yearly revenue for generation was about 45 million naira per annum. And we also realized that in the scenario 2, where we also introduced our various technical solutions as well, we also increased the revenue margin by 57 to 57 million, and then also to 60 million respectively in scenario 3. How did we achieve this calculation? We also basically use these clear calculations by clearly multiplying the annual generation of power to the connection tariffs, and this is what we actually considered. And then also we looked in the second scenario, we also looked at the annual generation minus the excess generation, because again, in the excess generation, we were using the excess generation for something else, and then we multiplied it by the connection tariffs. In scenario 3, again, we also looked at all of the same as scenario 1. However, there was an extra profit where we also considered the hydrogen for sales. So this was how basically we were able to calculate most of the yearly values in these areas. Now, to bring in some sensitivity analysis as well, also looking at the shares of hydrogen, we did a 5-margin differential analysis where we had about 100% to 80% renewable energy share, comparing all the same analysis, and then also to see how the lifetime cost would also associate to the various composition of or contribution of renewable energy, and then also looking at all the cost indicators as well as the profits that could come in. So this is basically what it looked like. And then one of the interesting thing we did, which I would want to also maybe highlight on in summary, is that we were able to identify that about 34%, there was a 34% drop of renewable energy share there was a 34% share of the levelized cost in the renewable energy share from 100 to 95. That was a steep drop because again of the total knockoff of the diesel. And then again, it was comparatively not even between the 95 to the 90, and then also as it goes down to 80. The other part again was also to look at where we were able to increase the capacity assets for the electrolyzers, the fuel cells, and also the hydrogen storage. These were all some of the shares that we actually had. And then also looking at the other components where we also tried to look at optimal solutions. We had another fourth scenario where we also tried to look at the optimal solutions of Bamu Bamu to be able to profit it. We looked at, maybe we could say that the best solution currently for Bamu, the Rubitech Bamu Bamu mini grid could be actually the 95% renewable energy share. That could be the most appropriate, looking at the already incurred cost and setup. So these are some of the analysis we could actually give to people that are actually trying to transition into the green hydrogen space. And then also we also try to look at the various when hydrogen could be competitive and when it could not. So in our cost for diesel, we were also considering the high cost of fuel and also transportation cost of the diesel from the vendor side to your site. Also replacement costs as well. So all these were also captured in the diesel, where we were also considering that the 100% scenario 2 would be the best case scenario for us, looking at the 3 scenarios that we actually did. There was another part again that we also considered, that when would hydrogen be competitive? If in this kind of scenario, we said, I mean, if hydrogen, it will only be competitive if we have about the diesel prices being about 625 naira per liter. So this has been one of the key indicators or findings that we've had. And then also we're also looking at when the profit margin for hydrogen for sales could be. And then we were also looking at, if we are selling hydrogen, then it means that then we could also consider that if the diesel prices were about, let's say, 600 naira per liters, then because we are selling hydrogen, we are already offsetting some of the costs to the sales of hydrogen. So basically, that has been some of the key things we've done from our side. I would move on to the next slide, which is in our research, we also considered that we were struggling a little bit with the research, with information. So we were, as I explained earlier, we had issues with assessing the clear output or data demand or energy demand from the sites of Bamu Bamu. So we had to do quite a lot of analysis, extrapolation to be able to get a very smooth energy demand. So that was one of the research gaps. And then the other part also was to look at having an actual cost for hydrogen, the H2 cost for data for Nigeria, which is unfortunately unavailable. So we were basically dependent on foreign data or secondary data. And then also we were also looking at the various, we need a more in-depth analysis on the emissions because at this state we were only able to use secondary data that we had. That's been how we're able to size or be able to quantify the emissions of the diesel. And then also we also need to consider or expand or get more information about the Power-to-X solutions or the various derivatives and other use of hydrogen that we could actually consider in the profits of this kind of simulation. So that has been one of the challenges that we have had. But then again, I would also want to say that if you need more information, our publication currently is out and is released, and it can actually be found on the website of the Delegation of German Industry and Commerce in Nigeria on our website. The English version is currently out, and then we are currently working on the German version, which will be available by mid of March. And again, thank you very much. I would be happy to take any questions if there are any. And please, again, if you need any further clarifications, feel free to contact us. We are very much happy to receive or get further inputs and insights in this particular research, and as well as further recommendations as well. So yes, thank you very much. And Sharon, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you. That was really, really, really insightful. And I'm sure that our participants have learned one or two things from that presentation. I know we're really behind schedule, but I just have a few announcements before we go into our breakout rooms. The breakout rooms are for the networking session. So we just have about 10 minutes to go around and network with one or two experts on the call. But before we go, I just want to let you know that one of our partners for the research, that is Enove, they have a very important information for us, and they are telling us that there's an open call. The call will be open from 13th of February until the 1st of April. And this call is for project drafts. So they're happy to connect with a potential partner from Nigeria, to partner with Germany to generate a joint project lead and to draft a project proposal for the given call. So if you require more information on this project, please just send a mail to us at energy@lagosahk.de, and we'll be happy to provide you with more information. Enove representatives are also on the call, so you could get a chance to connect with them. That's Tom Mikos and Katarina Horn are on this call. So if you find them in the breakout rooms, you can go ahead to ask for further information. It's been a very delightful time so far, and without further ado, I would want us to go into the breakout rooms now. We'll just have 10 minutes, and then we will come back to the general call, and then we will close the session. So thank you.